In August 2000, the massive nuclear submarine Kursk slipped away from its base into the frigid waters of the Barents Sea for a grand military exercise, unaware that it was sailing directly into a watery abyss. A violent and muffled explosion tore through the forward compartments of the vessel, sending shockwaves that registered on sensors miles away, while sirens wailed and water began to surge through the hull of the dying ship. The vessel lost all control and plummeted into the freezing darkness of the seafloor, leaving a trail of debris and sand as it struck the bottom with a final and crushing impact deep beneath the surface. In the grim silence of the stern, 23 survivors gathered in the pitch black of the emergency compartments, clutching each other for warmth and hope as they waited for a rescue that felt further away with every beat of their hearts. On the surface, the Russian military scrambled in panic as the submarine vanished from radar screens, and the once confident commanders realized that their pride of the fleet was lost somewhere in the vast and silent. The officer Dmitry scribbled a final desperate note in the dark, detailing the names of the survivors and the dwindling hope left in the compartment before tucking it away as a legacy of their final hours while the oxygen turned into oxygen. A small rescue submersible descended into the depths, attempting to lock onto the escape hatch, but the violent currents battered the craft, forcing it to retreat and leaving the trapped men to face the agonizing passing of every hour. News of the catastrophe ignited a global outcry as foreign nations offered advanced rescue technology, yet the initial refusal of the Russian leadership left grieving families waiting on the docks in a state of absolute and painful answer. Inside the iron tomb, the trapped survivors beat a rhythmic SOS against the inner hull with heavy tools, sending their desperate pleas vibrating through the cold steel as a haunting signal to a world that could not hear their alone. International rescue teams finally mobilized at the surface, but the fierce Arctic winds and treacherous waves turned the recovery operation into an impossible nightmare as the specialists watched their chances vanish in the depths of the depth. Total darkness enveloped the survivors as the power failed, and the bitter cold of the deep ocean seeped through the metal walls, forcing the men to huddle together while visions of their lives above flickered like a dying memory. In the command room, the leader of the survivors monitored the oxygen levels with trembling hands, watching the needle creep relentlessly toward the red line and realizing that the end of their struggle was approaching fast. The camera panned across the surface of the sea from deep below, where thin shafts of sunlight struggled to penetrate the gloom, casting the massive submarine as nothing more than a lonely metallic casket floating in a lifeless void. Norwegian divers finally breached the dangerous currents and reached the emergency hatch of the Kursk, fighting against the immense pressure of the sea to force open the rusted door, only to be met by a chilling and heavy dead. The rescue team swept through the flooded compartments with grim determination, finding no trace of life and only the profound silence of the tomb that served as the final resting place for those who had written their last words in hell. The official announcement of the total loss of the crew shattered the hearts of the waiting families on the shore, whose agonizing cries echoed across the harbor as the military ship stood in a solemn and mournful farewell to eternity. Months later, the great hull of the Kursk was hoisted from the seafloor in a haunting spectacle that revealed the mangled wreckage of the bow and transformed the once invincible warship into a twisted carcass of jagged steel. A towering memorial of black marble rose to honor the 118 sailors whose names were etched into the stone as a permanent testament to the merciless power of the ocean and the frailty of nature. The waves of the Barents Sea continued to roll over the site of the tragedy in the gentle light of the setting sun, hiding the broken remains of the vessel that still guards its tragic secrets from the prying eyes of the world. 118 heroes left behind 118 stories and a haunting mystery that remains buried forever in the deep, where their voices have finally faded into a cold and eternal darkness.